Welcome back to the Discovering Commercial Real Estate podcast. We have the founder and principal of Barone Management, Scott Barone, here with us today. Scott, it's a pleasure having you on. Thank you again for doing this.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. So Scott, walk us through your journey in commercial real estate. How and why did you get into this industry?
It was definitely not by design. It was more by
Accident?
mistake and tenacity more than anything else. I barely squeaked my way out of high school, managed somehow to get into Pace University. After, I think, a half a semester, I decided school was not for me. And, my father, who was, great guy, but a regular, blue collar, retail guy in the retail store, not like a retail empire, said, well, you better go out and get a job. And I got a job working on a Boar's Head route, carrying cold cuts.
Uh-huh.
And I loved it. For the first time in my life, I was in control of my own destiny. And as hard as I wanted to work was as much money as I was going to make.
Yeah.
So after, I guess, about a year and a half of working for somebody else, I was able to convince a guy to sell me like a junior partnership in a route, based upon the fact that I was going to build up revenues, which it did, phenomenally well. And right about, I guess, maybe just short of my 21st birthday, had the opportunity to sell my end of that business back at a nice margin, and then didn't know what to do with myself because, up until that point, I thought I was going to be a Boar's Head guy for the rest of my life.
Right.
I loved it. Spent the next, I guess, 6 months or so having a good time, spending through a lot of that cash.
Uh-huh.
And my father said to me, I was still living in my parents' house at the time, said, you can't do this forever. That money's going to run out. You better go figure out something to do. And he threw a newspaper at me. Classified ads were still a thing. Online didn't really exist. And he had circled a bunch of advertisements for stock brokerage jobs. And I said, I didn't go to college. I don't know the first thing about stock. He goes, well, yeah, but you know how to talk to people. So go give it a shot.
Okay.
Wound up working at, admittedly, just what I'll call a series of boiler rooms over the course of the next few years. Just grinding the phones. Made some money at it. Didn't ever really love it. And one day in, I guess, early 99, I'm sitting in my office staring out the window at a guy washing my car in the parking lot because we were big shots. We didn't have time to go to the car wash. We had a guy who would come around and wash the cars in the lot for us. And I said, that's a really phenomenal idea. If you marketed that the right way, you could make a lot of money doing that.
Right.
I took my entire book of business at the time, handed it to the guy I was partners with and said, this is yours. I'm out of here. I drove to Pape Chevrolet in Huntington, Long Island, signed a lease on a pickup truck, went to Home Depot, bought a pressure washer, and decided that I was in the mobile car wash business.
Oh, wow.
And within 2 weeks of doing this, the time was an insane thing, was washing the cars of the guys that I used to sit next to selling stock. Real big step, lesson in humility, if you will. But I was never scared of hard work. And, I spent, I guess, the next year or so building that up and realized that there was more of a future in truck and commercial fleet washing than there was in cars.
Okay.
Picked up a couple of fleet accounts, picked up a couple more fleet accounts. And then, probably the next 3-4 years after that, built a pretty sizable business. It probably had, 30, 40 men working for me, a bunch of trucks. Again, I thought that's what I was going to do for the rest of my life. And the problem then became is that in the wintertime, well, if you got trucks full of water, they freeze in the wintertime. Right. I needed a warehouse. And I rented this decrepit warehouse that was part of a tax foreclosed property that some family had owned in the neighborhood I grew up in Whitestone, Queens. All right. Just to keep my trucks in. And it was more space than I needed to. So I sublet out to a couple of friends. I had a buddy that was in a carpet cleaning business. I had a buddy that was a contractor. We sort of cobbled it all together and right away realized that there was more money in subletting the space than there was in washing trucks. This was a big piece of property at the time. It was, old asphalt plant with a lot of warehouses and outbuildings. I took a gamble. I leased the entire property from the guy who had inherited it from his father. And within 6 months, I was at 100% occupancy.
Oh, wow.
And I was doing very, very well. The problem was this building was falling down around my ears. and I needed to figure out how to fix it. And I didn't have any background in construction or anything. Same way I didn't have a background in power washing. Same way I didn't have a background in stock. Same way I didn't have a background in, selling meat.
But you leaped into it.
I figured it out.
Right.
And I liked it. I enjoyed it. I realized that the right marriage of real estate and construction had some long-term potential. And I started selling construction services to the companies that we were cleaning truck fleets for. And it worked out well. And I'd say by around 2008, we were a decent mid-sized general contractor building buildings for other people. I sold off the power washing business to a friend of a friend at one point. And then in 2008, we pulled permits. We won a bid to build a building right down the street from here, actually, at 231 Hudson Street. We're going to build a multifamily apartment building for the family that had owned the real estate for a very long period of time. And we pulled permits. I was definitely in way over my head, but again, I would figure it out. It was, 85,000 square foot, 10-story ground up residential building. I had never built in Manhattan. I had never built full ground up. I had never built residential. I'll figure it out. Pulled permits. 3 weeks later, Lehman Brothers goes off the edge. It's the end of the world.
Wow.
My wife was pregnant with my first child, my daughter Bianca, and I was in the middle of building a, admittedly, probably white elephant of a house in where I grew up in Whitestone at the time, and it was a very scary time to be a fee-based general contractor.
Right.
So one of my subcontractors, who's still a dear friend and partner to this day, came to me and said, "You know what? Have you ever heard of a guy by the name of Sam Chang?" I said, "Yes, I have." He goes, "I've invested money in some of Sam's deals. We're personal friends. We're partners in a restaurant." He goes, "This is a great piece of land. If you could buy this land, we'll be partners in the real estate with him and you build the building."
Right.
So it's great. Sam came out. We took a meeting with Sam, stood in front of the site, in Hudson and Canal.
Right.
And Sam said, "Okay, you go tell us the Ponte family owned the real estate. They own most of northern Tribeca from back in the 70s. You tell Mr. Ponte we'll pay him X amount of dollars." I said, "Sam, I don't know a lot about these people. I do now, but at the time I didn't." And I said, "But I know they don't sell real estate." And he goes, "Okay, you do a 99-year ground lease." And I had a contract, I had a pencil from behind my ear, ripped a piece of cardboard off a Dunkin' Donuts box of Joe, started taking notes. All right. Sam got in his car, turned away, turned to Johnny, worked with me. He's not my partner at the time. Worked for me at the time, is now a partner. And said, "John, what the hell's a 99-year ground lease?" And John said, I don't know, but we're going to figure it out.
Right.
And we negotiated a very fraught negotiation between one Vincent J. Ponte on one side and one Sam Chang on the other side. And I always said, the deal took 7 months to get done. A month because Vinny was tough, a month because Sam was tough, and 5 months because I did not know what the hell I was doing.
Right.
But we got it done.
Yeah.
And that was it. From that point on, I was never building for anybody else again, and I never have. We got very, very lucky on that first deal. I'm not the first guy to say I would rather be lucky than smart in life. On that first one, we got very lucky, just the way we timed the market. Guys from, what was at the time, Cube Capital, now it's Quadrum Global, approached us through a friend. We loved the site. We were building 2 hotels, one fronting Hudson, one fronting Renwick. We're building out of cash because there was no financing available at the time. And I put together an incredibly creative deal where we forward sold our interests in the real estate, entered into a concurrent contract to finish the building. And that's what became the Arlo Hudson Square right down the block from here. And it was life-changing experience. And Sam came to me and says, "You have to go find a 1031 exchange." To which I said, "What the hell's a 1031 exchange?" And I learned real quick. And we had a lot of capital at hand in a time where the market was still opportune. And we went on a really solid tear. I think we did 5 or 6 more hotels with Sam. We acquired a bunch of stuff on our own. I look at sort of, the progression in like almost a generational aspect. So, if Hudson Street was generation 1, we're into, I guess, what's currently generation 5 or 6, where we've always, controlled the majority of the capital stack. We never really brought in, outside money by way of some friends and family LP up until about 5 years ago, I guess. We've done now stuff in the crowdfunding space. We're looking at some institutional partnership deals. We haven't pulled the trigger on one just yet.
Got it.
But we're asset class agnostic, I guess, which is interesting when it comes to commercial real estate.
Right.
You tend to have guys that specialize in
Specialize,
one thing. You know, we're very heavy in the charter school sector right now. But, you know, if I look at everything we're building right now, it's, you know, under active development, I guess 4 or 5 more charter schools, 130,000 square feet of self-storage in Syosset out of Long Island. We're rezoning residential to industrial in Hotbog out of Long Island. We're, you know, 1, 2, 3, I think about to be 4 supportive housing deals in a very creative partnership we put together with another firm that we get along well with. So I guess that is sort of the story winding road of, you know, what led me to this point, I guess, in my life.
And that's a very, very unique story. But what do you think you'd be doing career-wise if not commercial real estate, if you didn't get into that warehouse that you got into?
It's an interesting question.
Or do you think the road would lead back to commercial real estate eventually?
You know, I don't know. If you would ask me at any point throughout that career path, if you would ask, you know, 17-year-old Scott Barone, what did he think he was going to be doing, you know, 30 years later? I'll be the biggest boar's head distributorship in the United States. Or, you know, X amount of years later, I'm going to be, you know, the next king of Wall Street. Or, you know, a couple of years after that, we're going to be the next, you know, Turner Construction. It's, you know, I think at this point, I think I'm a little old and I'm a little too experienced to pivot outside of commercial real estate. And I genuinely love what I'm doing now more than anything I had done in the past. But it would definitely be some variety of entrepreneurship steeped in some type of operating business. You know, as a commercial real estate developer and landlord, you really have to understand the businesses that are going inside your buildings. So I have a pretty decent knack for understanding what an operational business takes to run.
Okay, understood. And at what point did you feel you were ready to lead a team and kind of start your own company and scale?
17 years old when I realized I didn't want to really work for anybody else. You know, since that initial job as a helper on a boar's head route, I have never formally worked for anybody where I've drawn a paycheck or a salary in my life.
Right. Got it. And if you were to describe what a good investment is, what are the kind of key factors to that?
It's a tough question. I think it really depends on the investor. And by the investor, I mean the guy doing the boots on the ground work. You know, a 23-year-old Scott Barone thought an investment where you could, you know, take 10 grand and turn it into 20 quick is a great investment. 47-year-old Scott feels a little bit differently about that. You know, I still very much in a changing world where I fear more and more guys like me are going extinct. And I'm not that old. I just feel old. Is I still wake up every morning with a Viking mentality. If I want to eat today, I need to go out and kill something. It's the second thing I think every morning when I get out of bed. First thing is I laugh. I laugh in my own head for about 10 seconds. I look around. I go, none of this makes any sense. It was not supposed to happen this way, but here I am. I'm going to enjoy it. And then it's okay. Well, if you like how this is, you better go out and kill something because you need to eat today. And you know, behind that, you have a wife and 3 kids that eat as well. So go kill some stuff.
Got it. Understood. And as far as value add strategies, what are some of the common value add strategies that you implement to kind of maximize returns?
Listen, you know, the fact that we're still, you know, steeped in our own construction for the most part, by and large, gives us a real competitive advantage, not just from the cost of what it ultimately takes to get it done, but the ability to control the process, the ability to be less susceptible to, you know, unknown change orders or, you know, fatal flaw type mistakes. You know, as an example, what we've done with our charter school portfolio is, you know, typically we're sitting at the table with the school team before we've even found a piece of real estate for them. So we basically know the tenant, or if at a minimum, the tenant profile, all right, what it is they're going to need in that building, and pretty much almost to the dollar what it is that they can pay in rent, which will therefore underwrite and support X amount of loan, Y amount of equity. So, you know, that's a competitive advantage for us for sure. You we are not the type of guys that get out of bed to hit ground rule doubles. We ultimately wind up hitting some ground rule doubles because you always think a deal's going to be a home run and then stuff happens.
Right.
All right. The last 3 years being the perfect example of stuff happening. And I'm cleaning stuff up. But I've said for years I'm not the type of guy that's going to go out and buy a multifamily walk up at a 6 cap, clean it up, and sell it at a 5 cap.
Right. Not your thing.
I don't get out of bed for that.
Got it. Okay. And can you walk us through an example of a deal where you were so confident going in that this is going to be a layup, but you got smacked in the face by the market or whatever it is?
A couple of those examples. I can give 2 examples. So in 2018, we went into contract to purchase a property from the Sisters of Mercy in Dyker Heights, Brooklyn. It was a long, vacant, former orphanage building, huge footprint site, 700 by 200 standalone super block. Had a beautiful old landmark building on it that used to be the orphanage, and then just a big piece of land. And while we were in contract, or maybe immediately post-closing, we sat down and carved the site up. And we said, okay, you know what? We sold a piece of it at the far end on 13th Avenue to the School Construction Authority to build a public school. We took the center of a site and broke it off to the guys that we had originally partnered on the acquisition with to do condos, because we're not condo guys. It's not the business model we're in. And we were going to take that beautiful old landmark building. It wasn't landmarked yet. We'd agreed with the community, and we worked very close with a lot of local electeds to affirmatively landmark the building, which we did, and put a charter school tenant in place. There were 3 charter schools we had worked with. All 3 of them loved the building. The enrollment in that district was in high demand. And the local, not even the local, the state politics caught us out of left field. It was a local state senator who was patently opposed to having any charter schools in his district for all the wrong reasons. All right. And after a long road of not 1, not 2, not 3 schools, finally I said, you know what? Now it's at this point, we're in the middle of COVID. I'm tapping out. We sold. We still sold at a moderate profit. All right. Because of the way we had cranked our basis down on the other sides. But nowhere near what it was that we were anticipating to make and do. And it was for all the wrong reasons. It was just bad politics. And then the other one, I think, is a very good example that we're still holding on to. Our site in Long Island City at 903 44th Road, which is now known as the Woodworks, which is a flex industrial and office building, is the poster child of adversity. We acquired the site under a 99-year ground lease in 2013. Yeah, 13. All right. Very end of 13, with intentions to build a dream hotel. Put together a phenomenal design. It was basically like, Las Vegas comes to Long Island City. 200 rooms, 23,000 square foot roof deck at the second level, easy access from grade, catering facility, multiple restaurants. This was when Bill de Blasio was our esteemed mayor at the time, decided that he was going to change the zoning, that if you wanted to build a hotel in an M zone that also happened to be in an industrial business zone, you needed a special permit. Nobody gets that special permit. It doesn't happen. It's never been even applied for in the history of the special permit process. So all of a sudden, we had a site where we were ready to put shovels in the ground. Thankfully, we hadn't closed financing because we'd been in a really bad spot. But we needed to pivot and said, okay, what next? Okay, we'll build industrial with loft office above. As we're building the foundations for that building is basically right around the time we got into the charter school business. We got introduced to a school who had a charter for District 30. That's the super high demand. They have not built enough school seats out there at the public level. We'll take this thing through a BSA process to build a school above. No problem. We're going through the BSA process. This is, up until a couple of years ago, was the most dunk shot permit process in the city of New York. The 7319 permit for a school in an M zone. Lease is signed with the school. Building's designed where, as we're building the building below, we're oversizing the steel to be able to take 8 more floors above. And that's when Amazon decides that they're going to put HQ2 across the street from my site. This would have been great. We were still keeping a bunch of retail at the base. that was only going to create more activity in
Right.
the area. More jobs equals more residents equals more demand for school seats.
Right.
And then we all know what happened with Amazon HQ too. It got super politically contentious, and we
Yep.
wound up as the tail on the dog of that entire disaster. And our BSA permit was rejected, not on the merits of the site, bad politics.
Got it.
All right. Like literally, we had gotten the grant. The last box we needed to check was from the Department of Transportation. They sent us an approval, and then 30 days later sent us a letter to rescind the approval.
Wow.
Which is the most patently
Insane.
illegal thing you could have done. We could have sued the city under an Article 78 and won, but what was I going to win at that point?
Yeah.
So then we said, okay, it's just going to be 100,000 plus minus square foot industrial and office building.
Right.
Literally, as we're putting finishing touches on the building, we're renegotiating to recap our construction financing. COVID.
Wow.
You want to go lease up a 100,000 square foot building during the heart of COVID? And to our credit, more to my partner John Silviano's credit than mine, because I was dealing with multiple fires in multiple other places. We got that building now at this point leased up to, I think, almost 90%. All right. And are currently marketing it for sale because I've just had enough. I'm going to regret selling it because it's a beautiful building and it's doing pretty well. But, at a certain point, I'm into this thing for 10 years and I have kids younger than that building at this point. It's time. But, it's a poster child to adversity, but we never, I'm a bulldog. I don't ever give up. I don't ever give up. I don't ever back down. I'm looking at the world right now that we're in today where, bigger and smarter and richer boys like me, be, RXR related, or throwing the keys back at lenders, and probably with pretty good reason. That's not us.
Got it.
We don't ever give up.
Okay, understood. And it seems like politics are kind of the core of a lot of these issues. How would you recommend for a young, let's say 23-year-old, kind of navigating this political landscape if it's out of their control?
Trust no one.
Okay.
I guess I got to say this with a very, what's the right way to scrub the language? There are a few public elected officials that I know of that are really good guys and stand behind their word. Not all of my experiences have been bad.
Right.
Most of them have been.
Okay.
All right. Not because of anything we've done, just because I think as a result of the times that we're in, I think as a result of the city that we're in, and a lot of, forces are pushing and pulling in the opposite direction at the same time. We have a real lack of leadership in this city right now. And it is going to cost this city dearly for probably the better part of a decade, in my opinion. Between what you've seen go on with 421A or the lack thereof, what you're seeing going on with this concept of converting, a large core office building to residentials. Is a secret for you? It doesn't work.
Yeah. Doesn't pencil out.
It just doesn't work.
Yeah.
All right. To the way, funding is being allocated. It is an absolute disaster. So my advice to a 23-year-old is good luck. There is no good advice on that particular. I can give advice to 23-year-olds in a lot of different ways. How to navigate the political landscape in the city of New York is not one that, because it's
mostly just bob and weave. And
what's the old phrase? Give up all hope, ye who went to here.
Right.
It's sad. It really is.
Understood. And can you walk us through any upcoming projects or future plans that you have in the pipeline that are kind of out of the box or out of the ordinary?
I got to tell you, really at the end of the day, almost everything we do has been out of the box. All right. Because again, I'm not that guy that's buying 6 caps and trying to turn them around into 5 caps. It's just not the way our core DNA has worked out. We're doing a couple of things right now that are what I would consider to be a little bit more conservative to sort of, balance the scales a little bit. But, I look at what we've done in the recent past with really creative stuff. Like our site in Elmhurst was a really interesting play that we've been very, very happy with the results on. We ground leased the property originally in, God, I can't remember what year, 2018, with the intention to just rezone it. It was an M11 site. surrounded on all sides by residential, and high density residential, R6, R7s. All right. We said, okay, we'll ground lease this thing for a period of time. We'll rezone it. We had a deal set with the ground lessor where at a certain point in time we could purchase the property.
Right.
All right. Okay. We'll build residential. Maybe it's going to be condo. Maybe it'll be rental. There was still 421A at the time. And that's, again, when we started getting very active in the charter school sector. We got introduced to probably one of the best charter school operators in the city, one of the oldest, 27 years in. They had a charter. They needed a home in District 24. Problem was, is a ULURP in this city takes, on a good day, 3 years. All right. This school needed a home inside of 24 months, and that included building a building. So we took it through a BSA case. It's the only one we've won to date. All right. Because we needed to fast track the school.
Right.
We got the BSA case. We were successful in doing it. We put shovels in the ground in late August or early September of 2020. So you're 6 months into COVID.
Wow.
The world is on fire.
Yeah.
That schools were essential at the time. So we pulled a basically 5-story. It's 4, but it's got a double height space. Pulled a 5-story, brand new ground up, 68,000 square foot building out of the ground in 19 months.
Wow.
Put the school in time concurrently to the entire process.
That is next
We were
level.
running our ULURP in December of 21, right? Yeah. We're successful in getting our ULURP. We had planned to originally sell the residential site, but when 421A went bye-bye and COVID happened, there were no buyers in the market. So now we're going through the process with the local electeds out there, who happens to be a stand-up guy, very community-minded, knows his community, to take what could have been, in all honesty, market rate condominiums, all right, and turn it into long-term, fully affordable, deeply affordable supportive housing.
Got it.
Which is a long and nuanced process to go to, but we have the right partner on board for that who's done it successfully in the past. So, ultimately what was a long vacant, 40-something thousand square foot warehouse turns into, 208,000 square feet of fully tenanted building that literally only supports that community.
Right.
It's free. Charter schools are free public schools
Right.
for kids in that district. And then 140,000 square feet of supportive housing, deeply affordable, long-term for residents of that area. So that, in my book, if you can do good while doing well, it's a whole different ballgame.
That's awesome. That's great. And what's your long-term vision for Barone management? Are you looking to kind of continue what you're doing or expand into other verticals?
We're always in growth mode.
Okay.
I'm a big believer of the mindset of, if you're not growing, you're shrinking.
Right.
So I think we're going to look a little bit further afield. Like I said, we've got, within the last 18 months, picked up 2 projects on Long Island. The Bronx was never a place we had ventured to up until 24 months ago. And now we have 7 projects in the Bronx. And, probably do it with a little bit more scale. I mean, the reality of it is it takes just as much work and effort to develop a $10 million building that it does a $100 million building. And as you get bigger and you open yourself up to better banking relationships and, as I was mentioning earlier, sort of working our way through some, new and interesting ways to do equity, scale and size.
Got it.
All right. But, still asset class agnostic. And still only stuff that feels like home runs,
Okay.
God willing. And still always wanting to maintain as much control of the process as we can, because, real estate in this city is not like building, McDonald's on long-term ground leases in, Des Moines, Iowa.
Right.
If you do not pivot quickly,
Yeah.
the world just passed you by.
Definitely.
Right.
And what do you look for in an ideal capital partner? Is it kind of like giving you that flexibility to do whatever you want, or based
God
on your
willing,
expertise?
yes. That's, we've done now in the last, I guess 18 months or so, November of 20, I guess almost 2 years and change now. We've done crowdfunding 3 times. We really liked it. 2 with CrowdStreet, 1 with Realty Mogul, because it was very passive, quiet. capital that basically gave us still 100% control as long as we're playing within a very
Awesome.
defined sandbox,
Mm-hmm.
which we did. And, the first time we did, I was sitting in my backyard during the real heart of COVID, like, June, July of
Right.
20. I read an article on The Real Deal about crowdfunding. I
Right.
said, this is interesting. We should look into this. And that's how I circulated email with my team. We should look into this. I don't write long emails anymore.
Right.
Now voice text, I'm getting better at it.
Okay.
I used to write manifestos. And you get 3 kids, pressures on time become reality. And I liked what we did. It was actually that project I mentioned in Elmhurst was the first deal that we crowdfunded, because I saw where the writing on the wall was in the summer of 2020. And I said, there is going to be a window to buy stuff right now. However much cash we can scrape together on hand between between a couple of strategic, real close partners. Right. And by partners, again, not institutional, Jimmy, Steve, let's go. Let's put some money together. We'll put it together. And we bought the whole way down, and it was okay. Listen, Elmhurst had at the time to us, it was a sizable equity component just for the school. It was a $13, $14 million lift. Right. We literally, because the world was still half shut down, from the home office in my house, crowdfunded $7 million in a 45-minute webinar like that.
Wow.
It allowed us to put $7 million in change of our own money to work in other places. Right. And that deal was originally for the individual CrowdStreet investors, was supposed to be a 7-year hold horizon with a mid to low 20s IRR. Fast forward, I don't know, I guess about this time last year, based upon where interest rates were moving and the fact that, we still needed to figure out what to do with this newly rezoned residential piece, we took a look at it and said, you know what? I think we should just refinance. We can take all of these investors out, still hit actually a little bit better than the IRR. Right. We promised them, give them back money at a time when everybody would like to get some money back in, because the rates are popping, everything's happened. And that's exactly what we did. Awesome. So we wind up with full control of the site again, all right, with the ability to take it through its next phase, which is the supportive housing piece. And, all of those crowdfunding investors, it was I think we had 141, 142 investors. You never saw so many thank you emails.
That's awesome.
Hey, here's just as much, if not more money than you anticipated on a returns basis in about a third the amount of time.
Yeah, super fast.
Great.
That's awesome. And how would you recommend for someone super young looking to get into this business of raising capital and putting together their first deal?
Okay. You said it in the wrong order. Don't look to raise capital and put together a first deal. Put together a deal. All right. It all starts with the deal. If you have a good deal, right land basis, right seller's terms, right tenant use, wherever the creative piece is inside that deal, if you have that, call Scott Barone, right? Or somebody like him, right. All right, and let them figure out that piece together. Because if you go out there and say, well, I want to raise money so I can put together deals, nobody with money is going to take you seriously, right. Because at 23, you're not going to have a track record. Right. All right, nobody's going to believe that you know what you're doing, because the odds are you don't. Yeah. All right, but if you've got that deal, listen, no real estate developer is a pessimist. The guy told me a number of years ago, no pessimist ever built a building. Right. If you have a really good, sexy deal and no track record, find somebody with a track record.
Got it. Okay.
They'll put the pieces together for you. And then you'll learn on that one. And then on the next one, you'll do a little bit better. And then by deal 3 or generation 3, generation 4, you know how to do it on your own. Then you call in the shots in an entirely different manner.
Got it. Okay. So as a 23-year-old, your value add is kind of the time that you spend kind of hunting for that right deal, for the perfect deal.
Yes. And they come from the strangest places. I mean, listen, we have, good relationships within the brokerage community. Broker calls us up to show us a deal if it's something that I take seriously and say, okay, we're going to buy this. We show up and buy.
Got it.
All right. And they know that we can get creative because, listen, in this city, typically nobody is selling real estate because they want to. They're selling it because they have to. For a reason with the site, a reason with the business that used to be in the building, some outside family-related
investors,
thing. Yeah. All right. So if you have the ability to get creative, understand what it is that the guy on the other side of the table needs, ultimately you can hopefully put that in a position where you get what you want. All right. But like I said, it's, if 25% of our acquisitions come through, third-party brokers, it's a lot. It's word of mouth. It's reputation. It's friend of a friend. It's a guy who you did a deal with and everything worked out well. He's got a buddy. Hey, Mike told me to call you type of thing. It's that. And, the only way to build that over time is, reputation. Do what it is you say you're going to do, even if sometimes it hurts.
Understood. And for your own company, how do you kind of go about this process of goal setting for yourself and for your team?
Good question. I've had the opportunities to work with, over the years on a partnership level, guys that were senior partners in deals. All right. When we first came in with Sam Chang as an example, Sam was already a monster by the time that we were this little tiny partner, but he knew that we worked hard, got creative, figured stuff out, got buildings built, which is why we wound up building 7, 8 buildings in partnership with him. And I learned a tremendous amount from Sam, but there were a lot of things I learned from Sam that I haven't done the same way. Not because Sam was doing them wrong. We should all be as successful as Sam Chang, even in the insanity that Sam's gone through, being in hotels and hotels only in this city as a result of COVID. We should all still be as rich. But the one thing that I learned from that Sam did that I just didn't like, it didn't work for me personally, is Sam ran every project like an individual business.
I see.
Where we have been trying to, over the course of the last couple of years, sort of restructure our team, restructure, the operating business in such a way that we're running a business, not a series of projects under one umbrella, essentially. Because you wind up with a lot of inefficiencies that way. One project doesn't know what's going on with the other project, and you're not sharing information that could, benefit the other.
Understood. So you kind of set a set of standards across the board and instruct your team to follow these standards to kind of make sure that everything goes
That's
smoothly.
what we have been going through specifically the last, I guess, 7 to 10 months.
Understood.
All right. Has been like a real, okay. And, it's funny. I know a couple guys in particular that have been doing this a very long time, and they still do it the same exact way, no matter what, because that's what made them successful. If it's not broke, don't fix it. We've been trying to unlearn that thinking lately, and the mantra has been, specifically in the last few months, just because that's how we've done things for a very long time does not mean that's the way we need to continue to do them, because you're never really going to truly evolve that way. If you still put together a capital stack on a deal by calling 6 friends, well, you're going to need a lot more friends as the deals get bigger. All right.
Definitely.
So it's, crowdfunding being a good example, nothing we would have even remotely considered 4 or 5 years ago. All right. Now, sure, with 3 under our belt, it's a tool that's in the toolbox. How do we put new and different tools in the toolbox? How do we continue to, educate ourselves on, what is the right way to grow an operating business as a platform? If you look at the guys that have done this the best, not just in this city, but in this industry, Related, Vornado, go down the list. All right. And all of them are having fun times right now because, the bigger your portfolio was coming into COVID, the bigger problems you have right now. They're all big boys. They'll dust it off pretty quickly. But they run it like it's one cruise ship, not a bunch of little life rafts darting around all over the place. And there is an advantage to that. And that's the systems that we're going through, sort of beefing up right now, I think, for lack of a better phrase.
Okay. Understood. And Scott, if you were to look at trends in your interest in your skill sets, what would you say is the overall theme that led you to this point today?
Okay. My interests are not incredibly varied. I'm a simple guy at the end of the day. If I'm not working, I want to, especially as, my kids are getting older, 14, 12, and 6.
Okay.
Especially as my older two are getting older, and it's almost like I'm dealing with little adults. I'm enjoying that right now for the first time. As opposed to building a business over here and running a company, and but now this is sort of a new piece of the equation. You know what? I'm one of very few guys I know that are 47 years old. I don't have a hobby, and I've been bitching about that a lot lately. I should try golf. Try golf. I don't like golf. All right. I should try tennis. I got a tennis court in the backyard. I've never swung that racket once. All right. It's my hobby is work. Business. I think really at the end of the day. And if I'm not at work, I just, want to be decompressing, chilling out a bit, having a couple of drinks.
Right.
Just, I'm sort of at that nice, quiet, pace yourself phase of life, I think, right now. Awesome. I just spent the last almost 3 years building an absolute nightmare of a house, almost like end of the world type compound, which put a lot of gray hair on this head that was not there a few years ago. Now that that's over, I am looking forward to being at work or being at
relaxation.
Just those two things and nothing else in between.
Got it. Okay.
My friends can go out and play golf. I'll meet you afterwards at the country club for a drink. All right. Awesome. I don't need to be out there trying to perfect my swing. Not my thing.
Understood. And who were kind of your role models or people that you looked up to when you were coming up in the industry?
Okay. I've had a couple of big ones along the way. Listen, I think still for me to this day, my ultimate role model was still my dad, who passed on, it's gonna be almost 4 years ago now. My father was a regular guy. He owned a retail jewelry store in Whitestone, Queens, made a good enough living where our family was always comfortable, but he was not a stellar businessman by any extent. What he was a stellar human being. I learned more about life from him than anybody else. And I hope to be that same example for my kids.
Awesome.
Within the industry, Sam Chang was big for us. I say all the time, Sam Chang took a shot on me when nobody else would have or should have. And it's because Sam, I think, is a riverboat gambler by nature and is a deal junkie by nature. And he's been telling me he's been retiring for I don't know how many years, 15 years I know him at this point. This is the year I'm retiring, and I still don't believe him for a minute. This time he told you, just last week he told me it's really happening.
Not happening.
Vincent Ponte of the Ponte family, again, same principle, signed the ground lease with how old was I at the time? 33-year-old kid with zero track record whatsoever. All right. And you know what? We've done a couple of deals with them since, and they've turned out really well. Big name influences, that's probably really a big name. I like to think that I've learned more about who to be as a person than who to be as a businessman from maybe 5 or 6 guys throughout my life, where you look at them and go, that guy, he did that really well. And in some instances, I wouldn't do that the same way type of thing. So,
Got it.
I like life influences more than business influences. Okay. Business, you got to figure out on your own.
Got it.
Or at least that's the only way I know how to do it.
Okay. Understood. And do you have any idea that you believe that about a specific asset class or a submarket that many people you respect would disagree with you on?
I am very bearish, if not downright negative, on New York City office right now. Okay. Problem is, I don't think anybody's going to disagree with me right now. It's basically like standing around and going, that is nuclear plutonium. I don't want to touch that. And everybody else is going, yep, we don't want to touch it either. That's concerning to me, not just as a real estate developer. It's concerning to me as a New Yorker, because until we fix that problem, there are going to be problems across the board in every asset class. If there are not people filling those office buildings, there is nobody in those restaurants. There is nobody in those, nice gourmet delis. There is nobody or not as many people staying in those hotel rooms. Right. All right. If you don't need to work in Midtown, you don't need to pay $9,000 a month for an apartment in Midtown. Yeah. We've been in a space, specifically with the charter schools, plus we've done 2 lease deals direct with New York City. We're working on another one right now. I like government-backed stuff
Mm.
right now. I think, although it's a very fraught industry with a lot of frustrations and a lot of bureaucracy and process, when you do ultimately get to the end, it's worth the process. It is a not fun process to go through.
Mhm.
It's working with government, be it city, state, or federal, is not something I think anybody wants to do,
Right.
but you will do because it will reward you ultimately in the end. Um, I'm a I'm a believer that New York City hotels will rebound quicker than anything else because of the special permit process that was passed at the end of the de
Mm.
Blasio administration, where you're not going to see any new
New
hotels
hotels, yeah.
built in this city in a very long time. So if you've got the ability to hold on right now to hotels, and a lot of hotel owners are struggling right
Mhm.
now with good reason,
Right.
hold on another 24 months, you're going to be rewarded in spades.
Oh, wow.
A typical midtown select service key in like a Marriott Residence Inn or a Holiday Inn Express used to be, pre-COVID was a $500,000 to $550,000 per key number. You get 24, maybe 36 months
Mm.
out when no new supply gets built and we've shaken off COVID is in the rearview mirror a bit more. I think that's a $750,000 to $800,000 number, eyes closed.
Wow.
Because when you have no new supply,
Right.
demand and
go up.
prices go up.
Yeah, definitely. And as far as the office problem, if it's not residential that's going to fix that problem, what do you think it's going to be?
I don't know.
Okay.
I think that you've got, the problem with office that comes out of COVID is that there is a percentage of the population that is never coming back to an office.
Mm.
I think I'm not the type of guy that, because I came from the bottom, so I'm not one to speak ill of, the bottom, but I think that lower echelon, 10% of a workforce that used to be in an office, data entry people or whatever it is, stuff that I couldn't even begin to understand
Right.
how to do, they're never coming back.
Never come back.
They're never coming back, and they're not coming back with good reason.
Mm.
All right. In this city prior to COVID, it would cost $15,000 per year per employee to put somebody in a bullpen chair.
Mm.
All right. And then that person who was making, let's say, $65,000 a year now doesn't have to come into work anymore. Okay. His employer is saving 15, pay him 5 more.
Win-win.
He does his job from home, even
Right.
if he's a little bit less productive. Because if you've ever worked from home, especially if you have kids, you ain't gonna work done. But those folks are never coming back.
Right.
All right. Then I think the top 10%, your real executives, you know what they're doing? They're coming into the office on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. All right. And if you're in this city, Friday through Monday, they're in the Hamptons or they're in Jersey Shore or whatever there is. They're telecommuting on Mondays and Fridays. So, that's 20% of your workforce right there. And then there's another 10% mixed in between that top 10% and that bottom 10% that I think are living in a fantasy world that I personally would never want to live in. Oh, I don't ever want to go to an office again. How are you going to build a career? If you're just a face on a screen, nobody's ever going to build camaraderie with you. Nobody's ever going to have a relationship with you where there's a level of trust and understanding. You're never going to be able to build, as an employer, you're never going to be able to build a real team over Zoom. So,
virtually.
I think those people will ultimately come back, but it's going to be a lot longer than anybody in commercial industry would like.
Got it.
They're just living in a little bit of fantasy land, in my opinion. But
understood. Very interested to see what happens there. And Scott, what do you think makes a good leader and a good principal?
I saw like a newspaper clipping or some type of, you call it a meme, whatever it was years ago, where it's got a line down the middle and it says what it takes, a leader does versus a boss does.
Got it.
I like to think, and I've had my moments where I've failed here and there, but by and large, I'm a leader. It is never I, me. It is always we.
Right.
All right. You have to get people to believe in you. All right. You have to get them to understand that your vision, where sometimes admittedly insane, all right, will ultimately get whatever the entity is, the business, the corporation, the project, will ultimately get it to the place that it needs to be, if not better, and that those individuals will benefit as a result.
Mm.
You know, I've gone through a series of, and I think all employers in a, you know, now post-COVID world, 3-ish years, whatever this has been, everybody that I know, ourselves included, have seen some tremendous turnover.
Mm.
You know, to me, I think that there is I think it's factual. I think every one of us who lived through this thing now has some variety of PTSD.
Yeah.
Where we're just a little bit more broken than we were 3 years ago. Right. You know, your life got turned upside down, shaken. Okay, you're back on your feet again, but you're still a little leery. Yeah. And, you know, I've seen some people both on our team and on other people's teams make decisions that I just cannot understand for the life of me, that were not educated decisions. We've made some bad decisions on our own. All right. But, you know, we're sort of getting our sea legs again. And I think I mentioned earlier, I'm sort of rebuilding sort of the, you know, second tier of our team right now. After a very long period of stability, I haven't seen turnover like we've seen. I started the company in, the company, whatever you want to call it, in 99. Mm-hmm. So it's, you know, 24 years at this point. I haven't seen turnover like I've seen in the last 9 to 10 months in the prior 23 years combined. Wow. All right. I think everybody's just coming out of this COVID hangover, and they're all a little bit damaged as a result. And, you know, it is what it is. All right. I think that another big part of it is that the job market being as in demand as it was after COVID, which I still can't understand for the life of me how it was, where, you know, employers were paying people far more than they were worth, both by way of a compensation package, a bonus package, time off, all of this stuff, just to have people. That hangover's over. All right. You know, the reality of this now, interest rates have doubled. All right. Inflation has spiked. All right. The economy is in a miserable position, city, state, and federal. All right. A lot of these guys that, you know, had opportunities to be in a more steady and regimented position where growth would have been there, but growth takes time, are now waking up to this hangover of, oh, maybe the grass isn't always green on the other side.
Right. They're getting slapped in the face.
And, you know, I don't like this. Listen, I've had guys work for me over the years. I've always thought of it as not even extended family, as family, all right, who I miss tremendously. You know, a couple in particular over the course of the last, you know, 6 or 7 months, where it's on a personal level, it's absolutely heartbreaking. But listen, I wish them the best of luck. Smart guys, they're going to figure it out on their own. But I know I'm going to figure it out because I've always figured it out.
Right.
That's what I do.
Definitely. And Scott, what do you look for in a new hire?
Oh, one word, simple answer: hunger.
Okay.
You cannot teach hunger. You can teach anything else in the world. All right. You might not always be able to teach it to 100%, but you can teach it. All right. You can teach it. A million monkeys at a typewriter will write War and Peace eventually, right?
Right.
You cannot teach hunger. If that grind is there,
the fire,
that Viking mentality, if it's there, that's great. I'll take that 1,000 times over 1,000 than some guy walking in the door with a degree from Princeton or Wharton or whatever it is. Just give me some hungry street kids who just want an opportunity to
move forward,
to kill shit.
Right. Definitely. And who do you learn from at this point in your career?
Interesting question. It's tough. I'm a self-taught guy. All right. I never paid attention in school. Right. Probably shouldn't say that because I guess my kids will probably watch this at some point. I never paid attention in school. I very rarely did homework. I was a voracious reader from day one. Still to this day. I get into bed at night. My wife is watching Housewives or whatever nonsense that I cannot pay attention to. I'm reading a book before I go to sleep. All right. I will, when I was in school, I would sit down. I remember sophomore year of high school, biology. I had no interest in biology. I sat down the first week. I read the entire textbook cover to cover. Wow. I was able to drag myself through that class for the remaining balance of the year just upon what I had garnished there. So I think more than any single person at this point in my life, I learn from my own experiences and mistakes. And been plenty. All right.
Understood.
But mistakes are okay as long as you learn from them. I don't think I can point at one specific person and say, I learned from
Got it.
that person. I learned from figuring stuff out on my own, right,
Got it.
wrong, or indifferent.
Okay. And can you give us like 2 books that kind of shifted your perspective in a significant way?
Interesting. So unlike probably like a guy like yourself, a lot of guys I know, I don't tend to read motivational books.
Okay.
All right. I read books. Honestly, I read like historical fiction and stuff
Okay.
like that. I do it to turn my brain off because otherwise this thing is just constantly going right, wrong, or indifferent. All right. Reading a book is one of the few things that I have found that causes me to shut off everything else in my brain because it commands singular and absolute attention. Otherwise, you're distracted.
Got it.
But one of the few books I did read over time, a friend bought for me, I read Sam Zell's autobiography because I don't think I'm ever going to be as wealthy as Sam got to be, but that type of street hustler mentality, that irreverent mindset, that out of the box thing, I always connected with that type of mentality. Right. So I read that book and it was rewarding. So if you're a guy that's connecting with what it is that I'm saying here today, go read Sam Zell's book.
Got it.
I'm not going to write one of them.
Okay, understood. And what do you think drives you nowadays? Is it money, personal achievement, family, or philanthropy? Where does that hunger come from at this point in your career?
Family, definitely.
Okay.
And by, family, I mean, not just my wife and my kids, but, our own immediate family,
Right.
Partner John at work, we're like a family. All right. That's a big driver for me.
Okay.
I'm never a guy that was driven by money, quote unquote. Don't get me wrong. I like money. I love money. I love it for one reason. Money equals freedom. It's the freedom to do what you want to do, when you want to do it, how you want to do
Right.
it, who you want to do it with. That's what drives me. Right. I don't like rules. I have never played by them historically. And what I have learned at this point is that the more money you have, the less rules you have to follow. All right.
See.
As in not by go out and break the law or go out and break, the rules that one should not break, both by way of, law, code, or ethics. But it gives you the ability to just do things however you want to do
On your
them,
own terms.
On your own terms.
Got it. Okay. And Scott, I have my final question to wrap this up. What advice would you give to your 23-year-old self?
To my 23-year-old self, the first thing that comes back to mind is, don't ever lose sight of that Viking mentality. That's what I know how to do. More than anything else, don't take shit as seriously as you do. Okay. Sometimes. It's not always the end of the world. A little bit of gray hair and a lot of experience teaches you to take a breath, whatever the immediate. Listen, as a ground up real estate developer, you live in a world of fire drills. There is always some type of fire that needs to be put out. Problem on a construction site, problem with financing, problem with the tenant, problem with the building. Right. There's always a problem.
Right.
All right. And that 23-year-old Scott always thought that individual problem was going to be the one that brought the house down around his ears.
Right.
No, take a breath. Make the smart and rash decision as opposed to rushing into shit, which is, I guess if it's, 47 minus 23, it took me 24 years to figure that out, I guess.
Got it. Okay, understood. Scott, thank you so much for doing this. We really appreciate it.
No problem.
This has been super valuable, and I'm sure people can apply this to their careers moving forward.
Great.